Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. I guess in the last class we had finished looking at the structure of spermatozoa, right? We had looked at the neck, tail, as far as I remember. I'm not too sure. Tail was remaining though, I feel. We had looked at this head and neck portion. Am I right? Can someone please confirm?
So I think we had looked at the head only.
Only head?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Oh yeah, right, correct. Now I remember. Yeah, we will start from the next. So again, I'm not going over the like revision of spermatogenesis, whole of it. But in short, in the diagram, it is written here. You just have to look at the different structure and how the transition happens from the spermatogonia to the final spermatozoa cells, right? Now and this I will revise quickly. So sperm in general is divided into four main parts, that is head, neck, middle piece and the tail part. And as we had looked inside the head portion of the spermatozoa, it consists of two main structure, that is acrosome, which is a tip of the sperm or a cap like structure present at the front part of the nucleus. And it majorly its function was to contain this tissue dissolving enzyme. And I had told you that it is hyaluronidase that breaks open the egg membrane, so that the sperm nucleus can be inserted inside the ova structure. So that was the acrosome part. And the sperm nucleus, obviously, as every other nucleus, it has your DNA and proteins. So that was the head part. Now moving with the neck portion. So neck, it actually has two different types of centriole, not different types, two differently placed centriole structure. One is proximal and distal. So that is proximal centriole and the distal centriole. I hope you know what centriole is. If not, you can ask it otherwise, but I assume you would know it. So the proximal centriole lies in the depression at the margin of the nucleus. So what it means is, where is the diagram? Yeah, now if you look at this particular diagram or even this one, there is a kind of depression here of the nucleus. If you see this, there is a small depression of around the nucleus in between the head and neck portion. That one is the proximal centriole. It is introduced into the egg at the time of fertilization along with the sperm nucleus. So this proximal centriole will go along with the nucleus of the sperm when it goes inside the ova of the female, and it is necessary to initiate the cleavage in the zygote. So whenever again, why is the centriole required? It is required to complete the cell division process, or rather during the cell division process, these centrioles are those structure which are forming aster like bodies uh, at the poles of the cells, on which the mitotic spindles will grow, and they will hold the chromosomes or chromatid structures, and they will pull apart. So that's what is the centriole. So one centriole will be of the ova and the other centriole will be of the sperm, and then they will form a fusion of the nucleus, which will be again separated from the zygote to the next mitotic division. And that is why it says the proximal centriole is necessary to initiate the cleavage in the zygote. That is the complete to complete the first mitotic division of the zygote. This one of the spindle, or sorry, one of the centriole is required, which is present in the neck portion, and distal is present across the membrane in the other side of the membrane, that we will see here itself. I don't know if any diagram shows two different spindle fibers. Not really. I guess I have one more diagram somewhere. No, I don't have any other diagram. But yeah, like one is the proximal one, and right next to it across the membrane there will be the distal one. It's not differently located that far. It is just present next to the proximal one itself. And here people have usually shown as one centriole. That means this, whatever they have shown is the proximal centriole and not the distal centriole. Okay, so that was the like part of neck portion, and with respect to distal centriole lies posterior to the proximal, posterior as in towards the bottom or back side of the proximal centriole, and provides attachment to the axial filament of the sperm tail or flagellum. So whatever this flagellum structure is developing along the mitochondria, like throughout this mitochondria, which is again a spiral. So this portion, that is where the proximal is on the top and the distal will be on the bottom. And from this distal centriole, now because of the mitochondria, they may not have shown it here as such, I assume it so, but that's where the distal centriole will be located, and from there this axial filament or this tail portion will be growing further. So that acts as the point of attachment for the sperm tail, or what is also called as flagellum. Middle piece, it consists of the apical part of the axial filament. That is the again the part of the sperm tail, but like which is extending into sperm tail rather, and it is surrounded by the spiral sheath of numerous mitochondria. And of course, the function of mitochondria still remains the same, to provide energy for the movement of the sperm tail. So that is the function of the mitochondria. In general, mitochondria, they provide energy. In this case, it is specific to the sperm tail. So this portion is actually your middle piece, and which has the spirally arranged. Yes, okay, coming. Which has the spirally arranged mitochondria in around this axial filament. So that is what is the middle piece portion. So again, quick revision, there is head which has acrosome, nucleus, and then and in the neck portion we have proximal and distal centriole, and in the neck portion we have axial filament which is extending towards the tail along with the spirally arranged mitochondria. Remember, you have to write the structure. If at all the questions are being asked, we write the structure as well as the function. So both of these aspects needs to be mentioned there. So that was the third piece or third structure within the sperm. Now the last structure, which is tail. Now you can simply imagine what this tail would do, and also by virtue of knowing this process, I assume you would know what the function of tail is. Again, it consists of a central axial filament. I don't know if I had mentioned this. This axial filament is usually made up of protein, which is called as tubulin, and actin. These are the two different proteins which usually makes up a cytoskeletal or a flagella-like structures within the cells. So here also axial filament is made up of those proteins, and a thin layer of cytoplasm and a smooth plasma membrane. So if you have noticed, there is a thin layer of like around the central line, which is axial filament. On both sides you have cytoplasm. Now again, imagine in 3 dimension, through a tube there is a very thin filament going through a tube. That's what is axial filament. This tube has like a very thin plasma membrane structure, which is this outermost lines on both the sides. So that is the structure of the tail. The axial filament is formed of 9 pairs of longitudinal fibers, uh, which extend up to the tip of the axial filament. Now 9 pairs, this is again specific, otherwise you can imagine the length of sperm tail would have been drastically different with different sperms, right? That is not the case. There is a fixed amount, like how long a sperm tail can be, and that is what is the 9 pairs of these longitudinal fibers. Now again, these fibers, they are referring to those protein fibers which are making the axial filament. Another set of 9 thick, sorry, this is again a spelling mistake. There is, it's thick. So another set of 9 thick band shaped fiber is also present, which does not reach the tip of the sperm tail. Now, if I have this, so actually if you, where it is visible, okay, here it is not visible, but what it means is sperm tail is kind of tapering as in at the start it is little thicker and towards the end it is little thinner, and that structural difference is because of at the starting portion of the tail there are 9 longitudinal fibers, and then there are another 9 thick band shaped fibers. Band shaped is nothing but, you all know what, how does the hairband look like, right? A ring like structure, something similar. There are 9 such arranged just below the middle piece portion, so just below this, and that is how the tail would go from thicker to thinner region. Here it is kind of mentioned, you see this outer dense fibers, but now again this is overlapping with the mitochondrial structure, so you may not be able to visualize this, so don't look at this part, but this outer dense fiber is exactly what it means by this another set of 9 thick band shaped fibers. And like it is said, which does not reach up to the tip of the sperm tail, so that is they do not go until the end, they are just broken somewhere in the middle, and the sperm tail is continued forward. The free end of the sperm tail without additional fiber is called as end piece, of course that is the end piece. Then the flagellar movement, now flagella refers to the sperm tail itself. The movement of this flagellum enable the sperm to ascend in the female reproductive tract. So after the sexual intercourse, whenever the sperms they having like the spermiation has happened, that is the deposition of the sperm in the vaginal tract of the female, the sperm will ascend. Of course, that is to some extent with respect to the vaginal tract because of that movement or the contraction and relaxation of the vaginal muscles, and of course of the cervical muscles, but also it's because of the sperm tail that it keeps moving like upwards, that is ascending movement. So that is the tail portion of the spermatozoa. Do you have any question? Have you like, I hope you have understood the complete structure of this, how does a sperm look like, and what are the different structures and their functions of those subsequent parts. Okay, so I assume you have no questions here. And with that, we actually finish the whole of the male reproductive part in terms of the physical structures, in terms of how the sperms or how the male gametes are being produced, and the complete process along with the structure of the gamete, that is the sperm. Now we are going to look at the process of the female gamete formation, which is called as oogenesis. And at the end, of course, we will look at the structure of the ovum. Yeah. So oogenesis, as it is being mentioned here, it is the formation of the mature female gamete, which is called as ovum. Again, like sperms, we had different terminologies like spermatogonia, spermatid, spermatozoa, or sperm. These were the different terminologies with respect to male gamete. Similarly, in case of female gamete also, we will have several of such terminology, and we will go over one by one, like in a sequence, so you will follow all of it. So formation of mature female gamete, that is ovum, that process is called as oogenesis. Now in mammals, oogenesis begins in the ovary of a developing female fetus. Now, we usually assume that the ovum is being synthesized or is being secreted and produced and secreted only after puberty. That is not the case. Sperms in male, they will obviously get synthesized and secreted after the puberty in males. But in female, that is not the case. When the female embryo is about 25 weeks, that is when the baby girl is still growing inside the mother's womb and it is of 25 weeks old. Since then, the female will start developing the oogenesis process. Okay, so there is a drastic difference. Now, starting oogenesis does not mean that that female child is ready to conceive a baby. It is just a process that is preparatory phase for the as and when the puberty has been reached in the female girl, and before that there has to be certain preparation in terms of all of this process of formation of ovum, and that is what starts at the 25 weeks. But all the structures in terms of primary oocyte, for example, they will start forming at certain time space. We will see that whole of the process, and there I will mention this fact again. So thus, unlike spermatogenesis, which begins at puberty in males, oogenesis starts before the birth itself and is completed only after the fertilization. So oogenesis is kind of broken process. Broken in the sense it starts in the childhood or infancy stage. It happens to some extent before the puberty, and then it again stops. And after the sexual intercourse between a male and female, when the sperm they fuse with the ova, that's when the complete maturation of the that ovum occurs. We will see again how does this happen, but it is, like I said, it is a broken process. Like sperms, they get matured in one go, that the span of 76 days or so, starting from the primordial germ cell to the final spermatozoa structure. All of that happens in one go. There is no intermittent stop anywhere. But with ovum, it is not the case. It breaks at certain points. So this process of oogenesis is completed in 3 phases, same like spermatogenesis, that is multiplication phase, growth phase, and maturation phase. Like we had seen, multiplication phase, that means there will be some germ cells, they will multiply, they will create several copies, that is the multiplication phase. Growth as in actual growth towards the final gamete formation happens, and finally maturation of that gamete. So these are the 3 consecutive stages in the oogenesis process. Oogenesis begins, like I mentioned here itself, at the 25-week stage. Each ovary in human female, these are certain facts, each ovary in human female contains about 1 million primary oocyte. Like in case of male also, we have in one ejaculated seminal fluid, it has 200 to 300 million sperms. In case of female, at a particular time in ovary, it will have 1 million primary oocyte. Usually, the number of ova or number of female gametes, they are less in all the animal species, and the number of male gametes again in all the animal species is quite higher compared to the female gamete. That is the and I guess that has something to do with the process of evolution and adaptation over the time. So one ovule is released during each menstruation cycle. Again, this whole process we will see of the menstruation in the later part of this chapter. So what we need to remember here, what is oogenesis, when does it start, and what are the different 3 phases of oogenesis, that is multiplication phase, growth phase, and maturation phase. And we will like further unfold each of these phases into several other phases. Before I start the multiplication phase, do you want to ask any question? Manskit, any question? Pratham?
No, sir.
Okay, fine. So then we'll move forward with the first phase or first stage of oogenesis, that is multiplication phase. Now, like we said, it starts at the 25th week when the female child is developing in the embryonal stages. So during fetal development, oogenesis begins with enlargement of few cells of the germinal epithelial lining of the ovary. Now, again, we know ovaries, they start appearing somewhere around 22nd to 24th week. That is where the what do we call gender determination with sonography also happens. We will see that process also later sometime. But ovaries, they start forming between 22nd to 24th week, and from 25th week onwards, the enlargement of the few of the cells of germinal epithelium starts happening. So ovary has this outermost lining, which is the germinal epithelium. Again, these are something similar to as the original germ cells, or they can also be called as ovarian germ cells, because they are the epithelial lining. We call them germinal epithelium. These enlarged cells will divide repeatedly. Remember, this is multiplication phase. So these cells, the germinal epithelium cells, which are enlarged, they will divide by mitosis. That means the copies has to be exactly identical to the original cells and form a large number of germ cells, and that is what is called as oogonia. Like it was spermatogonia in earlier case, in this case it is oogonia, or they are also called as egg mother cells, and in male it was called as sperm mother cell, right? So just a little bit of difference, but the processes, they almost remain same. So that is the enlarged cells of the germinal epithelium will divide mitotically, form a group of cells, germ cells or germinal epithelial cells, and that cluster of cells will be called as oogonia, or individually they can be called as egg mother cell. Oogonium, IUM, that will be the single cell. Gonia refers to the plural form of it. So around 2 million of the oogonia, they are formed in each fetal ovary. Again, remember, this word is very important here to be mentioned, because that is not an adult ovary, that is a fetal ovary. That means of a fetus or of the embryo stage. So around 2 million of these oogonia cells are formed, and most important, no more oogonia are formed or added in the ovary after birth. That means whatever number is there in the earlier stages of the ovarian follicle growth, they remain constant throughout the lifetime. They are not divided further. Not divided further as in terms of the same oogonia cell. They of course divide further in terms of formation of the final ovum structure. That is also a meiotic division process. But this number of oogonia cells does not change later after the birth of the girl child. So this process of multiplication phase in the oogenesis is divided into 4 sub stages. What we call is formation of primary follicle, formation of secondary follicle, formation of tertiary follicle, and last, that is the formation of the Graafian follicle. Again, Graafian is name of the scientist whosoever had discovered this, and that's why this Graafian follicle name is given. So that is the 4 different stages in the oogenesis stage, that is of the first stage of multiplication phase. So again, oogenesis 3 stages: multiplication, growth, maturation. In multiplication there are 4 sub-stages. So in the first sub-stage, that is formation of primary follicle, what we have from earlier is the oogonium cells or oogonia cells, which divides repeatedly by mitosis. Now, like I said, they don't divide to form another subspecies of the oogonia cells, but they will divide for sure to make the final ovum structure. So these cells, they will divide repeatedly by mitosis, and a group of cells projects into the stroma in the form of a cord, what is known as the egg tube of the flugger. This is nothing but these cells, after division, they form a tube like structure, like that is what is in the form of a cord, and into the stroma, that means ovary has the inner portion, that is the stroma portion, and that particular tube structure which is developed within the ovarian structure, it's called as egg tube of the flugger. Again, this is the name of the person, so that is the egg tube in short. It finally changes into a rounded egg nest, and this tube will convert over the differentiation process from the tubular structure to a nest like structure. Nest is nothing but a group spherical shape of this egg tube. Now, out of these, one cell of the egg nest will enlarge and forms a primary oocyte. Now, only one cell out of these mitotically divided cells from this egg nest will form the primary oocyte, while others will form the layer of the follicular epithelium. Now, like what we know of a sperm is a single cell. In case of ova, we have quite many cells around it apart from the main gamete, right? So that is why all these different cells, they will be present. So from egg nest, one cell will enlarge and form the primary oocyte, and rest of the cells of the egg nest, they will form follicular epithelium, that is the epithelial structure of this primary oocyte. What does this mean? Is where is that? Yeah, so this is actually the final structure of the Graafian follicle. So what you have here at the center is actually your gamete, and they are surrounded by several cells, right? Like if you see, there are 3 different layers distinctly that you see, and these different layers, they are coming from this epithelial follicular epithelium of the egg nest cell. I hope this part is clear. So oogonia cell will divide mitotically. Only one of them will divide mitotically. They will form an egg nest, egg tube first, and then egg nest, and then one of the cell will enlarge, form the primary oocyte, and around that primary oocyte, rest of the egg nest cell will form the follicular epithelium. The primary oocyte along with the follicular epithelium. So this structure which is being synthesized or created is known as primary follicle. So that's what is the first stage, that is formation of the primary follicle. So from oogonia cell to egg tube to egg nest, which one cell will develop or enlarge into primary oocyte, and the rest will develop into follicular epithelium, and this structure is called as primary follicle. Now, most important difference, like I had mentioned earlier, the division of these or rather the oogenesis process is not constant, it's not continuously happening, but it is broken into several phases. And one of the reason that is being given here, so it's nucleus, that means the nucleus of the primary follicle, ultimately of the primary oocyte, enters the meiosis. That means it will start the meiosis. but remains in the diplotin stage of the meiosis 1. Now, I'm not sure if you know this diplotin stage. So I have kept a diagram here. So you all know basic phases of meiosis, that is prophase 1, prophase 2, prophase 1, metaphase 1, anaphase 1, and telophase 1. That is PMAT 111. And then in meiosis 2, that is the second stage of meiosis, it is prophase 2, metaphase 2, anaphase 2, telophase 2. So this is whole process of meiosis. Now, in the meiosis 1, in the prophase stage itself, the nucleus or the chromosomes, they remain in this diplotin stage, and the nuclear division stops at this stage until the puberty. So from fetal stage until the puberty of the female child, all of these primary follicles, they will not have finished the meiosis, which is the gamete formation process, but they will all be stuck at this diplotin stage. Now, what is this diplotin stage? You like I said, prophase prophase 1 is the part of meiosis 1, that is the starting of the meiosis. This is leptotin, zygotin, pachytin, and diplotin. So these are the, I don't know if you see the names, but these are the 4 names or 4 sub parts of the prophase 1. Then dikinesis happens, and then it goes for the meiosis, then it goes for the metaphase 1, that is of the meiosis 1. I hope you are following. If it is getting complicated, please let me know, or please ask question. So in, as and when the meiosis 1 starts in any of the cell, it undergoes these several processes, and then it finishes the prophase before it starts to go to metaphase. So this is the diplotin stage. That means, in meiosis, this crossing over of the homologous pair of chromosome happens. That is chromosome 1 of the male and chromosome 1 of the female. That means from the original cell, that is the germinal epithelium cell, whatever was present in there will overlap with each other. It will cross over a part of it, and that is being shown here. Like if you see carefully in this portion, these 2 homologous chromosomes, they have formed a pair. Now here it is red and blue. The red has exchanged a part with blue, and the blue has exchanged a part with red. So a small portion of the chromosome gets exchanged. This structure is called as chiasma. That is what is being labeled here. You can see here very carefully, right? So the dissolution of the synaptonemal complex. Again, this is one of the complex which is being shown here. You can enlarge the diagram and see it. It's just the protein complex which is responsible for crossing over of these 2 chromosomes. And that particular stage is where all the chromosomes in the nucleus of the primary follicle, they will be stuck at until puberty. So that means, let's say if a particular female child is not yet reached the puberty, and it is, let's say, 10-year-old, and if you take out the primary follicle from the ovary of that particular female child, what you will see is those primary follicles, they will be stuck at this stage, and they will not go further into metaphase and so on. Yeah, that is what is diplotin stage, where it shows this chiasma structure, and where the homologous pairs of the chromosome, they have just crossed with each other, and they stay in this stage. They do not go for this separation. Okay, so that is the meaning of this statement. Its nucleus, that is the nucleus of the primary oocyte, enters meiosis but remain in diplotin stage of meiosis 1. Nuclear division stops at this stage till puberty. Okay, does anyone have any question here, either in this part or in this diplotin part? Again, this part is I don't know if you have studied on your own, because the cell cycle and the cell division chapter I had given for self study, and that part had this different concepts. Okay, so then if there are no questions, then the next stage in the multiplication phase after formation of primary follicle is formation of secondary follicle. There not major changes are there. So the primary follicle changes into secondary follicle when surrounded by several layer of granulosa cells and a new theca. Theca is nothing but a membrane or a layer. This what we had seen was this primary oocyte with follicular epithelium, which was the primary follicle. Now this follicular epithelium will develop or differentiate into different types of cell, that is granulosa cells and theca cells. Not all of them, but some of them will differentiate into these. So around the primary follicle, when these granulosa cells are developed and the theca cells or theca layer have been developed, it is called as secondary follicle. So it is not a major change as such. Then the third step in multiplication phase, that is formation of tertiary follicle. The secondary follicle will transform into tertiary follicle by appearance of the this is fluid filled cavity called antrum. It's not flood filled, it's fluid filled cavity, which is called as antrum. Antrum, again a general terminology which refers to a cavity. So within the oocyte, what you have is this antrum cavity. Yeah, again this is the next stage of the Graafian follicle, but this is your primary oocyte which is developing, differentiating over the time. These were the follicular cells or follicular epithelium which will develop into the granulosa cells, and these are what is shown as granulosa cells, and the theca cells or the theca layer, that is theca interstitial cells. And this empty cavity, not empty, it is fluid filled cavity, that is called as antrum, or it is also called as follicular fluid because it is present in the within the follicular space. So it is called as follicular fluid. So that is the antrum cavity within the tertiary follicle. So in secondary follicle, it is just a compact mass of cell, right? Obviously slowly it will grow in size and it will create this empty not empty again, sorry, fluid filled cavity called antrum, and the fluid is called as liquor folliculi. Liquor means liquid, folliculi means refers to the follicular epithelium. So that is the fluid present in the antrum cavity, and it provides the nutrient to the growing primary oocyte. Growing primary oocyte as and when it develops into these different stages, that is what the nutrition is being supplied by this liquor folliculi present in the antrum cavity of the tertiary follicle. Now, due to this formation of this antrum, the follicular cells of theca, they are organized into two different layers. That is the outer one and the inner one. Inner one is called as theca interna and the outer one is called as theca externa. So this is nothing but, again, so these theca cells that you see here, here it is shown, you see theca interna, and I don't know where is externa. Externa is not shown, but it will be just the outside part of this theca interna. So these are the theca externa and theca interna layers, which is developed because of the antrum, because they will expand. Obviously the theca cells will also differentiate over time and they will form two consecutive layer, internal one and the external. That's what it means. Then the primary oocyte. Now, not to get confused with the primary oocyte and the secondary and tertiary follicle. Within the tertiary follicle, whatever that single cell which was enlarged here in the primary follicle will still remain as it is. The changes are happening only to the outermost layers, that is the follicular epithelium. So even up to the tertiary follicle stage, what you have is the primary oocyte which is developing slowly. So the primary oocyte within the tertiary follicle grows in size. Now at this stage, this primary oocyte will grow in size. Its nucleus completes its first meiotic division. Now that is, now when this will happen at puberty. When that girl child has reached a puberty, first meiotic division will happen. Until then it will be stuck at this diplotin stage. I hope you are following. These are kind of two stories running parallel. One is formation of the ova, and other one is the developmental stages of the girl child in terms of sexual maturity or puberty. So these are two parallel stories running. In one case, just before the puberty, all these cells, the primary oocyte, will be in the diplotin stage, and when they reach puberty they will all enter, or they will all finish the first meiotic division. Now as a result, the tiny first polar body and a large secondary oocyte, now from primary oocyte secondary oocyte is generated, and the first polar body is formed. Okay, so let me come here now. So this was the germinal cell. Then you had formed the primary oocyte, again the follicular epithelium, then granulosa cell, and then theca and theca interna, theca externa. That is, nothing is shown here. Just to simplify process, germinal cell which was diploid, it will form primary oocyte. This primary oocyte will get blocked at the diplotin stage. As and when the puberty is reached, it will complete this meiosis 1 process. That is only the half part of meiosis of the gamete formation. In that it will form, the primary oocyte will form the first polar body and the secondary oocyte, and these two are the haploid cells, and the final gamete formation happens here. Now okay, do you have any questions here? And I hope you are following. Mansi,
Yeah, sir.
following or complicated?
No, I'm following.
Akshay?
Yeah, following.
Okay, so that means it's not difficult, any difficulty that you are finding. Okay, so that is the first meiotic division. Now first meiotic division does not mean one complete meiosis division. Okay, first part of meiosis process, and the second meiosis will happen later, that we will see further. So what we had seen is the first meiotic division developing into the first polar body and the secondary oocyte, that is a haploid, which is the premature gamete. That is, gamete is yet to form the final gamete, that is ovum, but this is quite an early stage of the gamete. Okay, so that was the formation. As a result, the tiny first polar body and a large secondary oocyte are formed. Now the reason why it is being mentioned here, tiny and large, is because that is unequal division, right? Even if you see it in the diagram, the first polar body is shown smaller and the secondary oocyte is shown bigger. The reason being because this meiotic division, the first half of the meiosis, is unequal division. Unequal as in, like in usually mitotic processes, there is equal division. In this case, that is equal division of everything. In this case, there is not no equal division. Again, it goes back to the fact that there are certain proteins which takes part in this unequal division or formation of this secondary oocyte, and that is why it is unequal. We need not go into the molecular mechanisms, like what protein and how do they do that. So but that is the unequal division of this secondary oocyte formation. And the secondary oocyte that is formed is haploid. It remains almost entire nutrient rich, it retains all the entire nutrient rich cytoplasm of the primary oocyte. So you remember primary oocyte dividing by the first meiosis, forming first polar body and secondary oocyte. The nutrition does not go or go very little to the first polar body, and maximum of it goes to the secondary oocyte, and that is why it is unequal division, and that is why the first polar body is smaller and the secondary oocyte is larger. Okay, but the rest of the structures, they are same. Like the, if you talk about the nuclear division of the first polar body in terms of number of chromosome, they will be same. It just the cytoplasm is differently divided, that is secondary oocytes get maximum. Now of course there is a reason, because secondary oocyte is going to develop into final ovum, and throughout this process it needs to conserve it energy or preserve it energy, and that's why it gets maximum of the nutrition. Then the last stage, that is formation of the Graafian follicle. This is the mature tertiary follicle, that is whatever is developed in this stage. The first polar body and the secondary oocyte, whatever is developed, that is called as mature tertiary follicle, further grows in size to form the primary, to form the mature Graafian follicle. Now again remember, this we spoke of only the primary oocyte. Where is that? Okay, let me go back here. This we spoke of the primary oocyte. Around this primary oocyte, there was follicular epithelium developed into granulosa cells and theca interna and theca externa, right, in subsequent stages. So that is still there. It is not disappeared. The diagram is just the simplistic representation. So in the secondary oocyte also, what you will get, or rather both of these cells, they are still inside that follicular epithelium, and they are inside those granulosa cells, theca interna, theca externa. All of that still remains. Yeah. So these two cells, they are being formed within that whole structure of this follicle. Now this is like still a next structure of the Graafian follicle, but let's assume this was the primary oocyte, and this is divided into one smaller first polar body and one bigger secondary oocyte, and that's how this cell will look like then. I hope you understood what I said. So that was the formation of the Graafian follicle, and in continuation the mature mammalian follicle, that is Graafian follicle, is formed. So after this secondary oocyte, the Graafian follicle is formed after maturation, and this measures about 2.
Sir,
Yeah.
uh, in the previous diagram, there was another division, right?
Here.
Yeah, the second polar body and the ovum and all.
Correct. So we are yet to reach this stage.
So the Graafian follicle is formed from the secondary oocyte.
That's a tertiary follicle, na? After tertiary follicle, see again, follicle is the complete structure. Oocyte is the structure within the follicle.
Yes, sir. So the Graafian follicle is formed from the secondary oocyte. I mean, this step.
No, it's formed from the secondary follicle, not from
Yeah.
the secondary oocyte.
So when the Graafian follicle is formed, meiosis 2 still has not happened yet, but where it will happen afterwards?
Yeah, it has not happened yet. Sorry, did you ask something else along with it?
No, sir.
So you understood it, right?
Yes.
Okay. So again, like I said, it can be a little confusing, because here we are just looking at the oocyte structure and not at the complete follicle structure. But like I said, the follicle structure will always be present around it. That is incomplete. And what I shown you as Graafian follicle, that's how these all structures will look like. And inside there will be the secondary oocyte or primary oocyte or whatever it is. Yeah. So did someone just join in? Aditya, can you please wait for 2 minutes?
Sure, sir, sure.
So that's what is the I guess at this stage we can stop, because then I will have to revise next time whole of this process any which ways. So I guess it is best that we stop here, and next time we continue from the Graphian follicle. Again, like I have always been saying, please do revise these processes immediately, so that you have complete understanding of what exactly are the stages, and later on you don't have to struggle at all. Okay, so let me